All right, so today we are going to talk about all operations with decimals. So we're going to go ahead and title our notes decimals. Okay, and then we're going to separate it out and we're going to start with the rules for adding and subtracting. So we have adding and subtracting decimals, because the rules for adding and subtracting are going to be the same, whereas we're going to get a little bit different when it comes to multiplying and dividing. Hopefully most of this is a review, but make sure you're writing all of this down in your spirals. So rules for adding and subtracting decimals. You're going to line up the decimal point. You're going to fill in any spaces with zeros. And then you're going to add or subtract like normal. So our example for this, let's start with adding. Let's do 19 and 35 hundredths plus 2 and 1/10. Okay, notice how I've made sure that my decimal points are in a line. Once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and add my decimal points to my answer so that it continues to make a line. You want to have a whole line of your decimal points. Okay, then I'm going to fill in any spaces I have with zeros. So I have a space in the second row in the hundredths place, and I have a space in the tens place. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in with zeros. 5 plus 0 is 5. 3 plus 1 is 4. 9 plus 2 is going to be 11. So I put down the 1, carry the 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 0 is still 2. So my answer would be 21 and 45 hundredths. Okay, now if we were to do a subtraction problem, let's say we did 37 and, 37 and 12 thousandths minus 16 and 4 tenths. Okay, so we're going to set it up vertically. So I'm going to start with the larger number. So 37, start with the number that comes first. Then we're going to line up our decimals. So we have the decimal points lined up. And I have some spaces, so I'm going to go ahead and fill in the hundredths and the thousandths place with zeros. My decimals, again, are all in a line. So I'm going to bring it down and add it to my answer. So 2 minus 0 is 2. 1 minus 0 is 1. I cannot take 4 away from 0, so I need to borrow. This 7 is going to become a 6. This 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. 6 minus 6 is 0. 3 minus 1 is 2. So my answer would be 20 and 612 thousandths. Okay, those would be our rules for adding and subtracting decimals. Pretty straightforward. You just line up your decimals and treat it like normal. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about multiplying decimals. Multiplying decimals are a little bit different than adding and subtracting. When multiplying decimals, you are going to ignore the decimals. You're going to start out by ignoring them. Then you are going to multiply like normal. Then you are going to count how many decimals there were, or many decimal places. How many decimal places there were in both the first and second row. And then you're going to move your decimal that many times in your answer. Okay, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and do some examples. So let's say I have 5 and 1800ths times 9/10. I don't need to worry about lining anything up this time because I'm not keeping track of the decimals at the end. I am purely going to multiply like normal. So we're going to ignore those decimals. 9 times 8 is 72, so put down the 2, carry the 7. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 7 is going to be 16, so put down the 6, carry the 1. 9 times 5 is going to be 45, plus 1 is 46. Now, if I multiply this by 0, I'm just going to get a bunch of zeros, so I don't need to multiply. Instead, I'm going to count how many decimal places are in the first row. Well, there were 2 in the first row. How many are in the second row? There's 1. That gives me a total of 3 decimal places. So I'm going to start with my decimal to the right and move it 3 places. So 1, 2, 3. And that is where my decimal is going to end up. And my answer will be 4 and 662 thousandths. Okay, we'll do another example of this. Let's say we have 23 and, 8/10 times 1300ths. Okay, we're going to set them up vertically. So we have 23 and 8/10 times 1300ths. Again, I'm just going to multiply like normal. So 3 times 8 is 24. Put down the 4, carry the 2. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 is 11. Carry the 1, or put down the 1, carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Okay, I'm done with those carries. I'm going to add a 0 as a placeholder. 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 2 is 2. We're going to add our numbers. Again, if I multiplied anything by 0, it's going to be 0, so I'm not going to worry about it. 4 plus 0 is 4. 1 plus 8 is 9. 7 plus 3 is 10, so put down the 0, carry the 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. So now we need to keep track. How many decimal places were in the first row? Well, there was 1. How many in the second row? There's 2. Again, that's a total of 3 decimal places. So my decimal starts on the right, and I'm going to move it 1, 2, 3 places. So my answer for this problem is 3 and 94 thousandths. Okay. All right, now we are going to go ahead and talk about dividing decimals. Dividing decimals are a little bit special. So, continuing our notes here, we have dividing decimals. Okay. First rule for dividing decimals is there can be no decimal in the divisor. No decimal in the divisor. Well, what is the divisor? The divisor is the number outside the division sign. Okay, if I don't have a decimal in the divisor, I can go ahead and start dividing. But if I do have a decimal, you are going to move the decimal until you have a whole number. In the divisor. And you're going to move the same number of places inside the decimal sign. Or the division sign, sorry. Then you'll bring your decimal up top. and then you'll divide like normal. So for our first example, we are going to do 4 into 2 and 64/100ths. Okay, notice I do not have a decimal here in the divisor, so I can go ahead straight down here to where I can bring the decimal up top and divide like normal. So I'm going to bring the decimal up top, kind of like addition and subtraction. You want to line up your decimals, okay? And then we're going to go ahead and divide. Well, 4 does not go into 2, so I'm going to add a 0. 0 times 4 is 0. 2 minus 0 is 2. Bring down my 6. 4 does not go in, or 4 goes into 26 6 times. 6 times 4 is 24. Subtract, I get 2. Bring down my 4. 4 goes into 24 6 times. 6 times 4 is 24. Subtract, I get 0. So my answer is 66/100ths. So it's real simple when you do not have a decimal in your divisor. Now let's try one where I do have a decimal in my divisor. So let's do 36 and 72/100ths divided by 0.5. Okay, I have a decimal in the divisor, which is the number outside the division sign. So I'm going to move it one place, okay? So again, I'm going to move it one place in here and bring it up top. Okay, after you move it, you bring it up top. So now if I was to rewrite this, if I wanted to, this would be 5 because I moved it, and it's going into 367.2 because we move the decimal, okay? So 5 does not go into 3, but it goes into 36. 5 goes into 36 7 times. 7 times 5 is 35. Subtract, I get 1. Bring down the 7. Oh, I forgot to bring my decimal up top. 5 goes into 17 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. Subtract, I get 2. Bring down the 2. 5 goes into 22 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. Subtract, I get 2. Now, I don't want to have remainders when we have decimals, so instead I'm going to add a 0 and bring it down so that I can keep my division going. 5 goes into 20 4 times. I get 20. Subtracted 0. So my answer is 73 and 44/100ths. Couple things to remember when it comes to division. So the first number goes inside the house, or the first number is inside the division sign. It does not matter if it is smaller. The first number will go inside the division sign. Okay? Because we're dealing with decimals, we're going to end up with smaller answers anyways. So, for example, if I told you to convert 1/8 to a decimal, because this is a fraction, we're going to have our numerator go inside the division sign because this is really 1 divided by 8. Remember when we talk about switching fractions to decimals, you're dividing the numerator divided by the denominator? So I have 8. This is 1. 8 does not go into 1. Okay, so I have a 0. 0 times 8 is 0. Subtract, I get 1. Well, to keep this division going, like I added a 0 here, I'm going to add a decimal point, bring it up top, and add a 0. 8 goes into 10 one time. I get 8. Subtract is 2. Got to keep it going, so I'm going to add a 0, bring it down. 8 goes into 20 2 times. 2 times 8 is 16. Subtract, I get 4. Add a 0, bring it down, and 8 goes into 45 times. So 1/8 is 125 thousandths. It's always the first number goes inside the division symbol. All right, you can go ahead and finish up your notes.